I'm Neha. I'm a product manager at DBT Labs, and today I'm going to talk about how to get the most out of your DBT Cloud deployment. So as with any product that you pay for, it's all about the return on that investment that you make. Did it help you do your job? Did it help your organization achieve its goals? And ultimately, did implementing it and using it get you promoted? So we'll start with a couple considerations for your DBT Cloud deployment. The first is to outline and think about what would make data delivery successful at your organization. So think about how many stakeholders or business units you need to serve, how up-to-date the data should be, what kinds of SLAs you want to set for that data. The second consideration is how you get to this state based on your organization size and your team composition. Are you a smaller organization with a central analytics engineering team that's responsible for all data delivery? Or are you planning to upskill other teams with DBT Cloud and expand your usage, more of a hub and spoke model? By considering some of these priors, you can tailor your DBT Cloud deployment strategy to your organization's needs. So the example I'll talk about today focuses on a single center of excellence team, and they're looking to expand data delivery to additional teams at their organization. But a lot of the tactics and the features that I talk about today can be used for different use cases as well. So before we jump into that example, I want to highlight the two main strategies we'll cover today, and it addresses both sides of the ROI equation. The first is scaling data delivery by onboarding additional teams or individuals so that you can deliver value more efficiently. And the second is enabling those teams to provide a performant, well-governed data delivery experience and ensure that the cost to value is matched up. So let's jump into a scenario. Captain Jean-Luc Picard is leading his crew on the Starship Enterprise into new and unknown territory, deploying DBT Cloud for all of Starfleet. And they've done this successfully by supporting the data needs of a couple of crews. But Captain Picard and his crew on the Enterprise are now the center of excellence team that needs to deploy DBT to the rest of the organization. And this means that while the Enterprise crew are responsible for data products for a handful of Starfleet crews today, they need to switch to enabling these other crews to use DBT Cloud so they can more reliably and efficiently support all of Starfleet's data needs. So to increase Starfleet's return on investment with DBT Cloud, Captain Picard and his crew will be responsible for onboarding these teams and enabling them to efficiently deliver quality data products to stakeholders. So we'll start with that first piece, how to onboard teams so that you can scale your data delivery. So to ensure they're getting the most out of DBT Cloud, Captain Picard wants the process of onboarding teams to be like their starship moving at warp speed, very fast. And when we're thinking about the ROI equation, the ability for additional users to get onboarded and use DBT to build and service data to the organization is a crucial part of your investment in DBT Cloud. And the speed with which you can onboard those users and get them up and running is essential for maintaining a good return on investment. But the Enterprise crew is running into some challenges. We've all been here when we've been trying to set someone up in a new tool. Rather than getting their teams onboarded in a couple days, there's a lot of back and forth to get access figured out and connections set up, and that's stretching onboarding out to many weeks. But there's a better way. It shouldn't take Captain Picard and his team close to a month to onboard these new teams. And so they outline a few goals to tackle onboarding. The first is to get users access to DBT Cloud securely, ensure that access controls are set up for all of their users so they have access to the right resources, and get them set up with connections so that they can hit the ground running with development. And with functionality in DBT Cloud like single sign-on, role-based access control, and global connections, the Enterprise crew knows that they can hit these goals. So their first initiative is to make granting access to DBT Cloud more streamlined. The Enterprise crew are working to get 2 new teams onboarded. the Prometheus, and the Excalibur. These users already have access to dbt Cloud through the identity provider. But they can't start working in dbt Cloud until they're given access to the specific projects. And so to get data teams associated with these two crews, the enterprise crew sets up these groups in dbt Cloud and maps those groups back to the identity provider. They can then assign those groups projects and roles so that these users now have the access that they need in dbt Cloud. Now, when a user is added in the identity provider to that group, they can join via single sign-on and automatically get access to the right sets of projects with the right roles. They also decide to set up a project admin group so that they can designate access to a set of projects with these admins and sort of hand off the administration to a different set of users. And so this allows some users to act as these project owners or project admins, and now they can manage their own access instead of relying on the enterprise crew every time. So to recap, the recommendations here are to use single sign-on, and that makes it easier for users to join with mapped groups, articulate which groups should have access to which projects, and ensure that there are project admins so that teams can manage their own access without having to rely on a single admin. So now that Captain Picard has a strategy for giving users access to dbt Cloud, they need to set up their project with data platform connections. And this didn't seem too bad at first, but as they started to onboard more and more teams, the number of issues and the amount of duplicative work they were doing really grew. But there's a better way to do this as well. Data platform connections in dbt Cloud can now be set up at the account level and reused across projects and environments. And this reusability and centralized management allows these teams the ability to self-serve their setup rather than relying on the enterprise crew to get started. And if they need additional connections, they can ask the enterprise crew to set those up and get access to them. Now, once teams have a connection set up, developers still need to set up their individual development credentials so that they can start their development process. And to make this easier, they use the data platform OAuth or external OAuth. External OAuth uses the identity provider. And rather than entering credentials in manually, developers can simply authenticate through that data platform or the identity provider that was set up and get the access to the data they need and get started with development. So a few things to take away when setting up connections. The first is to define an intent for each connection, and this way you don't end up with duplicates. It's also important to have a consistent naming convention so that teams can understand which connection they should be using during project setup. And lastly, use external OAuth or OAuth so that developers can easily access the data platform with their existing permissions. So with this new workflow, the enterprise crew can set up data platform connections once and then hand off the rest of the project setup to individual teams, and they're no longer a blocker for these teams to get started. Captain Picard is thrilled with how efficiently the enterprise crew have onboarded these new teams. These teams can now log in with access to the right set of resources, have data connections set up so that they can start developing, and have started already delivering data products. And so that checks off the first step in increasing ROI with dbt Cloud. The faster your team can get onboarded and ramped up, the faster that they can start building and delivering value to the business. And if you can get a team onboarded in 1 week or a few days instead of 4 weeks, that's 3 extra weeks that they can spend delivering those data products to stakeholders, and the faster that you can show that return on investment with dbt Cloud. So now we'll find out how Captain Picard and his team are getting visibility into what these newly onboarded teams are working on and how they're able to support a governed and efficient data delivery strategy. So let's take a look at the ROI equation again. In this section, we're going to talk about how the enterprise crew can increase the value to the business they're delivering by enabling teams to build high-quality data products while optimizing the resources that are required to do that. So it's now been a couple months and the enterprise crew have onboarded about 5 new teams, and they're up and running with their projects. But the enterprise crew don't really have a good sense of whether they're making the most of dbt Cloud and how they can improve. Captain Picard could set up meetings with other captains, but their calendars look like this. I've definitely been here. So instead of more meetings, Captain Picard can go to the new Data Delivery Insights dashboard in dbt Cloud. And this will show a number of metrics that will allow them a way to get an overview of how teams are delivering data to the organization. Captain Picard wants to see if projects are leveraging dbt best practices and better understand if teams are delivering high-quality data to the organization. So he can do this by looking at test coverage across these projects. And this indicates whether a project's models have tests set up. He notices one project with only 35% test coverage, not good. And so he reaches out to that team that owns that project and encourages them to add tests. Captain Picard also needs a way to flag potential issues before they become a problem to stakeholders. He started running weekly check-ins with teams, but that wasn't very efficient, and he was struggling to pull together a list of issues. Instead, he can go in here and look at recent job runs and look at which ones are failing and bubble those up to the relevant teams. He can also review source freshness to understand if the teams are hitting benchmarks for data freshness and highlight any stale data sources that might need troubleshooting. And to ensure that data initiatives continue to be funded, Captain Picard presents these metrics to execs quarterly. Specifically, he wants to show the value that these teams are delivering and balance that with the resources that are required to deliver these data products to the organization. And so some of the ways that he can do that is by looking at metrics like models built, average job runtime, average model build time, and keep track of those over time and compare across projects to ensure that those costs aren't creeping up. So what I showed right now is a prototype, but we do have a beta for Data Delivery Insights currently, and we plan to add some of this functionality over the next few quarters. It's going to be a cornerstone experience for admins, team leads, and even for developers. And it should give you more control and visibility over data quality and the operational efficiency of your pipelines. So if you're interested in access to the beta or being a design partner, reach out to your account team or feel free to catch me after this talk. Okay, so by having a shared view into these metrics, the enterprise crew, that center of excellence team, can now build best practices for the additional teams that they've onboarded. So to make it so, Captain Picard has tasked his team with optimizing the most used models, removing unused models, reducing model build time, and limiting the number of unnecessary model builds. And this is all to ensure that they can prioritize improvements to the efficiency and reliability of the data products that they're delivering to Starfleet. So after identifying a handful of teams and projects, the enterprise crew is trying to figure out how they can understand model usage and identify any redundancies so that they can prune models that aren't being used. Once they do that, they want to ensure that teams are leveraging best practices for delivering high-quality data. Model query history, lineage, and recommendations in the Explorer can all help with that. The team wants to start by auditing model usage. The enterprise crew can use model query history, specifically the query history lens in Lineage, to identify and optimize the most queried models. In the example shown up here, you can see that the transactions model is a public model with high usage in the last 30 days. And so they know to focus their attention here. Then they identify a few models that haven't been queried recently to see if they can be removed. And this is where having that query history lens on Lineage can be really powerful. They don't want to remove any models that, that downstream models have dependencies on. The enterprise crew can now dig in and identify these redundancies, armed also with the information about whether or not those models are being used. And now that they've done some of the groundwork, the team wants to address any recommendations around documentation and test coverage, For this project, you can see they have 100% test coverage, 100% documentation coverage, but they don't have full documentation coverage for all of their sources. And so the enterprise crew can use these recommendations to ensure that documentation is consistent across the teams. And this in turn makes the data more accessible and readable to stakeholders. All right, so the next step for the enterprise crew is to find a way to reduce average model build time, particularly for their largest and most popular data sets. One tactic the team chooses to implement is incremental models, which allow you to limit the data that needs to be transformed to only the rows that have been created or updated since the last run. But this strategy was difficult to control and didn't always work. It didn't make quite the impact they were hoping for. And that's where the new microbatch incremental strategy comes in. They can easily break up these massive data sets into smaller bite-sized batches that dbt processes individually. And this makes the workflow for updating these large models much faster, more reliable, and much easier to manage. The incremental microbatch models are currently in beta, but we're also planning some follow-up work to make running these even better in dbt Cloud. The way we're going to do that is by evaluating which batches need to be loaded by checking the persistent state. If you want to learn more about microbatch, you can head to the Discovery Hall and chat with a dbt expert. So now the enterprise crew has made progress on reducing the average model build time. They need to address a spike in model builds in the past month. And to do this, they can use adaptive jobs. Adaptive jobs poll the data warehouse to see if sources have been updated and only build the models with new data. This allows you to run the job more often and get fresher data while building fewer models. So to set up an adaptive job, you can go in and create a new job and then select the adaptive checkbox. Once you select that checkbox, you can set the frequency for the job. And in this case, I'm choosing 2 hours as a limit, and I want the job to run at least every 24 hours. Once you do that, you can save it, and then when you run, you'll see which models were built and which ones were skipped, along with the reasoning. So you can see here that some models were skipped, either because there was no new data or the limit for updating those models was reached. By using adaptive jobs to run jobs more frequently and skipping over models that don't have new data, the enterprise crew is able to make their models both more up-to-date and more efficient. And they strongly recommend that the other crews that they've onboarded do the same. And over the next few weeks, they see a reduction in the overall model builds while achieving even better SLAs for the freshness of that data. What I showed was a prototype today, and this feature is currently on the roadmap. Again, for more information, you can head to the dbt booth and chat with some of our experts there. So, to recap, the story of the enterprise crew and Captain Picard is like many Center of Excellence teams that are tasked with making dbt Cloud successful at their organization. By onboarding additional teams quickly, they were able to more holistically address the data needs for their organization and realize that return on their investment in dbt Cloud sooner. Once they got those teams onboarded, they used data delivery insights as their mission control so that they could monitor data quality and the efficiency of their data delivery pipelines. And finally, armed with those metrics, they were able to create best practices for other teams to use functionality like microbatch incremental models and adaptive jobs so that they're balancing that ability to deliver high-quality, well-governed data with the resources that are required to deliver that data. Due to his leadership, Captain Picard is promoted to Admiral, and now that Starfleet is able to make the most of dbt Cloud, they can boldly go where no one has gone before. So here is what we've learned from Captain Picard and the enterprise crew about increasing their ROI with dbt Cloud. They used two main strategies. The first was scaling data delivery by onboarding new teams, and the second was enabling those teams by providing them a performant, well-governed, high-quality data delivery experience. They used a variety of dbt Cloud features that are either available today or coming soon on the roadmap to help get the most out of their dbt Cloud deployment. From more streamlined connection management to data delivery insights to adaptive jobs. That's all I've got. I will stick around for any questions. Thank you all so much.